Thank you so much for coming out today for our final of a series of 4 forums for our Woodstock candidates, and I'm sure Jeff will say this too, and we'll all say it a million times, but really thank all of our candidates for stepping up to this process. Not an easy process, and they've all been working really hard at it, so yeah, thank you guys, all of you. So I'm Amy Fraden, and this is Jeff Collins, and we're the co-chairs of the Woodstock Democratic Committee. And I must look really funny right now with my mask and my glasses, but whatever. Anyway, I'm going to say a few words, and then Jeff's going to take the intro, and then we'll turn it over to our moderator, Christine. Just a reminder that early voting starts next Saturday, the 14th. So after you go to a No Kings rally or before, which everybody should go to, early voting starts, and it's here, and you can go to voteulster.com for the hours of early voting, okay? But thank God it's here in Woodstock for this cycle. Okay, so the WDC would like to acknowledge and apologize for any pain caused by the conflict of timing of this final forum and the celebration events for Pride Day in Woodstock. The forums were booked in February, long before we were aware of Pride celebrations on this date. There is so much planning that has gone into these events, including outreach to media, social media, mailing lists, our neighbor-to-neighbor work, the coordination of our moderator and recording engineer, the venue availability, as well as candidates' availability, that it would have been impossible to shift gears at this late date. We are grateful to our candidates for showing up over and over for these events, and look forward to hearing their closing statements today and seeing them again at the meet and greet at the Town Hall on the 22nd. And we truly celebrate Pride Day and every day for our LGBTQ+ friends with all of you.
So again, thank you all for coming. This forum is part of an ongoing effort to give voters as much information as possible in order to make the most informed choices as possible. Welcome to the 4th and last of the candidate forums presented by the Woodstock Democratic Committee. We've tried to make these forums as factual and unbiased as possible. Our moderator, who you've already probably met because you've seen her 3 times before, is not from Woodstock, has no stake in our elections or in any of the issues we'll be discussing at these sessions. She's independent and will moderate the forums as she sees fit. The WDC will have no input during the sessions. In order to know which issues and questions are most important to you, we've conducted an online survey of Woodstock voters and have factored your responses into the content and format of the forums. You'll have a chance to meet the candidates and ask questions with them personally at the Woodstock Democratic Committee's meet and greet on June 22nd. We've not shared any of the questions we're asking with the candidates or their campaigns. We've only told them about the format, rules, and 3 main issues you had told us you wanted addressed. Today's issues are accountability and management, including personnel and the police department. We're recording these forums so that many more people, other than all of you here today, can watch them at your convenience. Please remain quiet so that each candidate's statements will be clearly heard on the videos. Again, thank you for coming and taking time out of your lives to learn about our candidates. You are why we do this. You are why democracy works. And now I'll introduce I want to say one more thing, sorry. Democracy is under attack. Here is democracy. We need to support democracy and keep supporting democracy. Introduce our moderator, Christine Dinsmore.
Thank you. I first want to make a confession. I'm a bit discombobulated because I came in and there was no parking. And I was like frantic and everything. And I have to say, as Rob accused me of, I pulled the moderator card. I yelled at the police and said, I'm the moderator, it won't go on without me anyway. So, but I am a little discombobulated. And then they switch it up. I've always been there, now they put me here. They think I'm getting too complacent here. So, in any event, hello everybody, and yes, this is the 4th of 4 forums, and then you'll have the meet and greet on, I believe it's the 22nd. And that will go back to the Woodstock Town Hall. I'm not going to repeat, each week I repeat the same thing, so I'm going to just kind of summarize things. But one of the things I do want to emphasize is that if by chance you were given electioneering material or buttons or anything as you came in, just for now, if you could put them away, because we're trying to keep this as neutral as possible. Thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about a little recap. The very first one was general, and you got to have the candidates meet, give their opening statement. And then I think the next one, I'm so discombobulated at this point, the next one we spoke about the environment, specifically water and the climate. And then last time we were talking about development, zoning, and housing. So today we're focusing on management and accountability, including the police department. And I gotta say, I'm a little grateful right now for your police department, because I'd still be running around. Okay, but in any event, sorry, I don't mean to interject my position here. Okay, so I just want to a little bit talk about the format. Today's format is, again, on management and accountability. And the candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer a specific question, and I'm not going to repeat it. It came from the Democrat, it came from the public. And they will have 3 minutes to do the closing statement. So that's pretty much what it is. I just want to, again, this I'm going to read because it's important. We ask that the audience refrain from applauding until the end of the program, although you can applaud after the candidates are introduced. Also a reminder, there's no electioneering in the building, including posters or flyers. Any interruption of a candidate from the audience or other candidate will result in that candidate having more time added to their response. In keeping with my role to provide an environment where each candidate can put their best foot forward, I want to remind everyone that while specific issues can be charged and even controversial, and your enthusiasm or passion about a subject or candidate, it does not preclude that we ask that you refrain from jeering and cheering. I want to emphasize this. This is the candidate's last formal chance to talk with you. You might see them informally, but this is their last formal chance. So I think we need to make sure that they deserve to have an atmosphere where they can put their best foot forward. And I am emphasizing that not because this has been a prize. I mean, this has been a gem. You've all been wonderful, but it is the last one. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Okay, and as you know, the forum is being recorded, and it will be on the Woodstock Democratic Committee website and Facebook page in the next couple of days. Let me again introduce our timekeeper, Susan Bissonette. That's a really tough job. She deserves applause. And now I'm going to introduce our candidates. The town supervisor candidates, Anula Cordes, Erin Moran, and David Wallace. You'll notice there are only 2 candidates here today, and that's because Lily Karlikoff had a death in her circle, and she's at a memorial right now, but she did provide 2 statements, one a general one about accountability, and then her closing statement, which I'll read when it's appropriate. And then we have here, where are we? I have, you're in a different order right now. I'm like, we got Marcel Nagel. And Lori Osborne. So here we are, we got through that stuff. So now we're going to begin. Are you ready for your questions? Are candidates ready? Okay, we're going to go from, as we have been, left to right, and we'll move over. So this is question number 1. It'll go to Ms. Cortes. Finance. What are your plans for managing the town budget, bonding, and optimizing grant opportunities?
Thank you. Actually, I want to take a little bit of my time to just acknowledge that June is, in fact, Pride Month. And it's a time to honor the courage and resilience and contributions of our LGBTQ+ neighbors. As a member of the gay community, I am really proud of the organizers of Pride, and I'm happy to see this type of activity in Woodstock. This is exactly what I think we need, more inclusivity. So regarding the finance and the budget, bonding, and there's a lot in that one question. So if I don't answer everything, I'm happy to speak with everybody or anybody after to make sure that I get through my points. First and foremost, I think that whoever wins this race is inheriting a certain amount of cushion moving forward. So that is actually a very positive thing for the budget. The second thing is we, in my opinion, how to handle financing, budgeting, etc. It's really important to weigh a balance of keeping money aside for a rainy day, especially in this day and age, right? So we don't know, we have a dependency to some degree from county and state. They do in fact give us some grants, whether for highway or for other purposes. And we don't know if those things are gonna stay in place. So I believe in retaining a fiscally conservative approach to finance and budgeting. But that said, I do not believe in keeping the savings so large that our infrastructure is in trouble, or the safety of our residents are in trouble, for instance, with the parking lots or things like that. I think that we might look at the budget and the use of the dollars from the budget with more of a look at the quality of life that Woodstockers want to experience when they come in here, the quality of life that visitors expect when they come to Woodstock, and at the same time...
Unfortunately, you didn't get your warning, but...
Thank you.
You do have a closing statement, though, so... Okay, Ms. Moran.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for showing up. I know it's been a hectic day. The Pride Parade was amazing. Okay, so finance. So there's been a lot of talk about this $3 million surplus. I think it's really important for everyone to know that surplus didn't happen overnight, didn't happen over a year or two. It took time. It is, as Anula said, a rainy day fund. For instance, the Como project. There was a public hearing for the vote to go to bond. We actually didn't go to bond. We didn't have to borrow money for that because of the fiscal responsibility of our government. So that was done completely with rainy day funds. So the town of Woodstock has a AA rating, and what that means is it's like a credit score. We have a really good one. When we do have to go and borrow money, we pay a lower interest. That directly affects all of you, all of us as taxpayers. That means you're not going to have as high of a tax increase when we need to pay that back. These are very important things to know. Budget's complex. This is my area. I've done it. I've worked in finance for many years, over 10. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've already been looking at the budget. There's actually 2 line items that we're gonna see a cut next year from Ulster County because of some people in that big white building down in DC. So we know cuts are coming. So it's nice to know that we can move the funds around as needed. You know, there's also been some talk about taxes, not raising them. We have obligations as a municipality. When we raise taxes, the cap is 2%. New York State gets money too, and they want that money. So there's more to the story, and it's very important. I've been looking into it. I know this. I've got to hurry up. If we don't raise taxes this year, guess what? We have to raise them by even more next year, and we get penalized. There's more to this story. It's not just a $3 million surplus.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
But there is a more than $3 million surplus from last year alone. So we need to invest, and we need to invest, and it has to be a triage. What we need to do is focus on the low-hanging fruit. So, for instance, the planning board doesn't have a lawyer, really, that they can access. Como is doesn't have proper maintenance. The dog park is atrocious and needs to be upgraded. The parking lots are minefields that need to be dealt with. And also, Zoom, it wouldn't cost that much for us to have a sound engineer. This has been handled really well, but sound meetings, the sound at town board meetings often sound like 1960s kung fu movies. And that needs to change. We gotta be able to find in Woodstock a sound engineer who is able to focus on your democracy and your meetings. It's your democracies. These are your town board meetings. You should be able to hear them. And so we need to make some, long overdue investments. And I would never raise taxes if we have a surplus of that level. We didn't need to raise taxes, and it was, again, it's your money, and there's no need for raising taxes if you run such a large surplus. Regarding bonding, we'll talk more about bonding, but I am for replacing the youth center and doing a bond, but only that building until we raise the millions upon millions that is required to do the entire project from philanthropy. There's no way I would do a bond beyond the youth center.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
So the budget is really complicated, a lot of big numbers in there. I believe that the town has a responsibility to continue to operate with what would be considered a healthy surplus. I think $3 million is probably more than we should have there, and I don't believe people pay taxes to have money sit in a big surplus. But we don't want to cut it so short that we end up in trouble. I'm sure there are guidelines that are handed down by the state, and we should follow those guidelines. I think the grants writer idea is something that we absolutely have to engage. Other municipalities get grants. We should be doing the same thing. Quality of life. If we got that surplus, I don't know what the problem has been over the last few years with the parking lots and not being able to get the holes filled. It's really not rocket science. It's redundant maintenance. It needs to be done. And by keeping our infrastructure safe, we limit the liability. That's a big responsibility of the entire town board, is to limit the liability. Taxes, unfortunately, I think we all know taxes are always going to go up. We need to make sure that we make healthy decisions to limit the tax increases as much as we can. But tax increases are a fact of life. One of the line items that I would like to be able to say we could safely reduce, if we can, would be to limit the number of the expense line that is for lawyers and litigation. We need to keep ourselves out of the courtroom and away from the lawyers as much as we can. And we've failed miserably as a municipality in that regard over the last few years. That's where I'm at.
Great, thank you. Ms. Osmond.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just echo really quickly that the Pride celebration today was amazing, and it's really emotional to see the amount of love and support that comes from this entire town, and I think we should all try to function that way as much as we can. So I was really grateful to have been able to witness that. So yeah, the town is in good fiscal shape. We've got a good credit rating. I think our reserves are more than they need to be. I think that we could use some of that $3 million reserve to do things like shared services with a grant writer. I've been talking to someone who's running for Shandaken Town Supervisor, and there's no reason that we couldn't look into some sort of part-time shared services for grant writing for the towns to use to help take advantage of the opportunities that might be there, whether it's for our emergency services, whether it's for Parks and Rec. All of these things are something that I think we could avail ourselves of. There is a way that we could possibly take back some of the real estate transfer tax that's paid to New York State and put that money towards housing. I know that there is a program that other municipalities have signed up to do, and that we could be exploring that as well. I do think that the planning board should have a legal fund. I think that some of the monies that are held in reserve could be definitely put to maintaining infrastructure, parking lots, dog park, for example. I have a friend who brought a garbage can to the dog park herself to collect poop, and she was emptying it. That doesn't need to happen. I think video and audio for board meetings would be good. I think that would not cost a lot of money. I think also, I was talking to the Shandaken town clerk, and they have an emergency alert system that costs about $5,000 a year. Olive is using the same company now. It texts and calls landlines and cell phones. I think that's something we should be looking at. And I think that as far as bonding, sorry.
Thank you.
To be continued.
Question number 2, and there's going to be a question directed to the supervisor candidates and then a separate question directed to the board. Okay, so don't take notes now, candidates, on their question. You could if you want, but okay, here we go. This is for the supervisor candidates, okay? This is about staffing. How will you approach staffing, and say something about your approach to delegation versus oversight? Are there effective monitoring systems or new ones that you would put in place? And we begin with Ms. Moran.
Thank you. Staffing. I've actually been talking to a lot of the town employees. I've been asking them about what they think is going right with the town and what they would improve upon. And there are a lot of ideas out there. I have had experience through my extensive career with people reporting to me as well as me reporting to people. It's funny because in all of our careers and all of our paths, we can look back and hopefully you've been lucky enough to have a good mentor or two, and I have somebody who's actually shown me the ropes. I think that's something that is a quality of a leader. That's something that I would bring to the town of Woodstock as far as staffing, looking at all the departments and seeing where there's maybe duplicity versus gaps. We've all talked about the lacking maintenance department. I've heard, well, I've been told, the potholes, when we need to fix potholes, it's outsourced to another town because we don't have anyone employed that actually has that knowledge. So we need to get that back. We need to get our employees with the resources they need to do their jobs. As far as delegating and oversight, I think oversight's really important. One thing I disagree with the current supervisor on is delegation. I do want to see some kind of HR consultant, which I know there's one that's used time to time with the town. I think when it comes to the employees, they should have a resource. They should have somebody they should go to for things when they have to go on a medical leave. It shouldn't go all through the current supervisor. I think he's inserting himself a lot because he cares, and maybe it was a smaller town and it worked back in the day. I don't think that's a good solution going forward. I think it's a place where delegation could help free up the time to focus on other things like the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
I'd make some new hires. I'd hire a grant writer full-time. I'd hire a HR consultant, not full-time, but again, I agree with Erin on that one. I would hire an extra person in maintenance, at least one, because potholes shouldn't be something that are profoundly difficult to fill. And I wouldn't micromanage. I think micromanagement is rife in this town. I started getting involved in politics when I tried to get an HEPA filter for the youth center, and now we're actually facing another Canadian wildfire situation that's going to foul the air, and they still don't have a HEPA filter because the town supervisor thought it was an unwise, expensive $250 to protect the lungs of our children. I value people, and I assume the best. Many town employees go above and beyond their duties. They are adults and professionals, and we should treat them that way. We should set achievable but ambitious goals with deadlines. We should have regular meetings that make sure they have a purpose. We should nip drama in the bud. We should praise employees often and publicly. We should compensate people fairly, and we should also update our employee handbook, which dates from 2012. But to create a work environment and to retain employees, we need to have a strong employee assistance program. We don't have one. And we want employees in a crisis to get the help that they need. We should match also the county policy and provide fully paid parental leave of up to 12 weeks for town employees, matching the county.
Thank you. Ms. Cordes? Whoop, give her a second. Ms. Cordes.
Okay, I have a lot of experience, decades of experience with staffing oversight, and that oftentimes is the hardest part of the job. You know, we hire people, we like people, sometimes we feel like we're a family, we get along, but the job is to be able to support a positive work environment, to support people growing in their roles. I don't know that that's something that we do enough of here in Woodstock. But also in a fair way to constructively offer advice for improvements. So I think that that feedback has to be consistent, and I would like to see that feedback in writing. So I support the idea of having an HR consulting firm or some such setup where an unbiased individual or individuals will step into some of our most complicated problems and follow the law, our law, state law, and make sure that we don't end up in lawsuits. So I would like to see more of an operations type of a person here. That's something that I think is very, very important. The proverbial, if a supervisor ends up under the ice truck, we need somebody who can step in and maintain the operations of this town. I think that we can, I don't know that that's a full-time job, but it's something that I want to consider and look at very carefully. We need a grant writer. There's a lot of money out there, despite the current Washington, D.C. problems. There are county opportunities for money. There are state opportunities for money. And I think that's something that is really, really important. Really swiftly, I'd like to see liaisons come back. Not sure why they went away, but our task forces, committees, and commissions don't have liaisons who come to the town board table and advocate for the work that they're doing. And I'd like to see that come back.
Thank you. So town board candidates, because that really kind of falls to the supervisor of that. So this is, as a member of the town board, what feedback would you give to the town supervisor based on their answers? In other words, how would you reinforce or improve upon the supervisor candidate's answers? And we begin with Ms. Osmond.
Okay, thank you. I think that the feedback that I would give and the work that I would do to help bring this forward would be to definitely procure grant writer services, whether it be full-time or shared services with another town, which might be the most practical. I do think we need HR services. I don't think that any town board member should, supervisor or anyone else should take it upon themselves to be the HR person. We need someone who has that sort of training to deal with situations as they arise. We need to delegate in cases. For example, if a complaint of intradepartmental harassment comes up, rather than a single member of the town board or the supervisor taking it upon themselves to adjudicate that, we need to hire an independent attorney who is well-versed in these areas to do a thorough investigation and then report back to the town board, keeping everything as professional as possible and avoiding liability to the town too. I think that we should be looking at, looking at possibly having a Parks and Rec department or Parks and Rec head at the very least to sort of oversee things. I do believe that delegation also includes giving the public a choice. I am in support of the Youth Center Skate Park and Andy Lee Field revitalization in its modified form. And I do think that that should be left to the public to decide. If they want it, great. If they don't want it, they've spoken. But I don't think I think certain things should be delegated to a public vote. And I do believe that the other thing I would really like to see happen are quarterly reports in public to the town board from departments, task forces, and committees. Not to be called onto the carpet, but just to be able to interact and hear what's going on. I think that would go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel?
There were a lot of good answers from everybody on that, and I think I want to just start with what my experiences have been in dealing with the struggles I've had with the town. And there seems to be an incredible amount of micromanaging. I'm the mad foiler. I put in the FOIL requests. I put in a FOIL request for water tests. It seems like it has to come from the supervisor rather than the water department. There's numerous instances where it just feels like incredible micromanagement. Town employees report to their department heads report up to the supervisor, it comes back down to the town board. Our employees are our biggest asset when it comes to running the government. I believe we have a responsibility to pay true livable wages. When we have employees that don't feel good about coming to work because maybe they have to go work a second job after hours, you're not going to get the most out of them. They have to feel good about coming to work. And that's been one of my personal successes with my business. I've always paid above what anybody else has been paying. And any municipality has a responsibility to pay a livable wage in their own community. The situation where with the committees like the WEC and all of that, we've lost some really great people along the way. I'd actually like to bring some of them people back and have them back on the Woodstock Environmental Commission. They did amazing work. Let's get some of these good people that got railroaded out of here back.
Thank you. So next question. Again, it's going to be a question for the supervisors, a question for the town council. So here we go. Training. Are there additional training or continuing education programs that you envision for town employees that are not already in place? We begin with you, Mr. Wallace.
There's a lot of training that doesn't get done. First off, we have the Association of Towns, which we could take advantage of more. We could send department heads to their schools. We could provide regular sexual harassment training on it. We get it in the fire department every year without fail. I hear it's not done every year for town employees. Ethics training is something that each committee and each task force, volunteer committee, they ask for it and they don't get it. So there's a tremendous amount of training that isn't being done, and I'll invest in that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cordes.
Okay, so the Association of Towns offers new council people training, new supervisors training. I almost think that ought to be mandatory. Ethics training happens, not everybody signs off on the ethics report that we're supposed to be signing off every year. I'd like to see that change. And if someone is not signing off on that, I would like for there to be a mechanism by which we ask them what the issue is, where they refuse to sign off on the town's ethics policy. Within each department, the question of training is different. So I think that we should be asking the employees and their managers what training they need. I think that this requires a collaborative and transparent approach. For instance, in our water department, we have one person who actually can conduct the water testing. And so I would like to see us have an employee go through the proper training in order to grow in his or her role. And that's something that will come to the town board from within if we have the leadership at the town board table that cares very much about that transparency, collaboration, and sitting down with people to see what do they want. Also, we might have somebody in one department and they might really want to switch and grow their career in a different way for whatever age, life situation. And I think we ought to do something proactive to help support that.
Thank you.
Can you
Ms.
repeat-
Marie.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Are there additional training or continuing education programs that you envision for town employees that are not already in place?
Thank you. Yes. I agree with, like my fellow candidate said, the Association of Towns is a great resource. I think that we should utilize that more. I think also working within the department, speaking to the employees, our highway department, there's a gap of, I believe, many years. So there's an employee that's been there 30 years, and the next longest employee is someone who's been there 8 years. That's a big gap as far as when you're talking about knowledge and how to do things. We need to fill that because we need to retain people. People are leaving because our wages are not as competitive as other towns. A lot of the town employees don't actually live here in Woodstock. I'm sure you all can figure out why. For instance, our building inspector is also the assessor right now, wearing many hats. That one kind of gets me because our building department has been busier and busier with the growth of this town. And now we're sort of down a person, and I think that's a department that could grow with additional training as well. A lot of when things like this happen and someone's in another department, there is kind of a seat of your pants, I forgot the saying. I don't know that there is a lot of formal training out there. I think formal training is good because it sets a standardization of what's expected. I think that also falls back to job descriptions, and I think these things can all be improved. I think there's definitely a need for internal training as well as training from the county and the state that we really should be taking advantage of.
Okay, thank you. So to the town board candidates, it's pretty much the same question, but are there additional training or in-service continuing education programs you would recommend that have not already been discussed? And we'll begin with Mr. Nagel.
Well, I think that education and training is critical, especially in a municipal setting. And I think in many ways our town has failed that responsibility. When it comes, specifically I want to comment on one thing. When we have a poor morale in our workforce, oftentimes that generates complaints. And those complaints, harassment complaints or sexual harassment complaints, right now my understanding is they get reported to the supervisor. And while it might be appropriate to report it to the supervisor, I want the responsibility of vetting those complaints and resolving those issues taken away from the supervisor and handed to a separate committee or group or professional that would vet those complaints. I just don't think it's right for the supervisor to have the control or responsibility of handling a complaint from an employee that's dependent on their paycheck. Just like the Zoning Board of Appeals is the mechanism for a citizen to appeal a building and zoning issue, the employees should have a very independent appeal process and review process to vet that complaint so we don't end up in court again spending tens of thousands of dollars like we have in the police matter. And that's just one of the situations that's pending. But ethics training is another one. I would actually like to revamp the entire ethics law. I don't think it reaches far enough in some specific areas, and we've had problems with that as well. And us town employees and town board members and supervisors, we're going to need training because we've had our own town board members brought up on ethics complaints and it came back unfavorable. And we shouldn't be put in a position where we end up in a bad spot.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond?
Okay, yeah, so I spent 14 years on the Onteora School Board, and professional development was a big part of that. We went to annual conferences, we did webinars, we did in-person trainings, and the New York Association of Towns offers all of those things. They have an annual conference, they have new board members meetings, they have webinars, they have updates, and I think that not only should new board members be required to go to these, but I think every year town board members should be encouraged to participate, and also department heads if it's relevant. They're a great resource, and I think you learn so much, at least this was my experience being president of the school board, you learn so much talking to other districts to see what their practices are, to see how they do things. And also, legal updates are important. Laws are always changing, and we should keep abreast of that, and we should be required to keep abreast of that. So I think the New York Associations of Towns is an invaluable resource and really should be required of all of us. I do agree that no one should be resisting ethics policy. We should certainly be reviewing that. I think that the other training that we could be talking about, and I think this falls under training as far as I'm concerned, is the Drinking Water Source Protection Program, the DWSP, that's working, it's with New York State of Health, that's working with some of our members, is going to be involved in public and creating public awareness of what's going into our drinking water, not only just source testing, well testing, monitoring, but we should be aware of things, whether it's roadway spill off of ice, road salt, or pesticides, or even things that we're flushing down our own systems. And I think we could also be testing our wastewater to see what's coming out and going into the waterways as well.
Thank you. Can you do the 15 seconds, because I'm going to go Mr. Nagel. Mr. Nagel, you talked about setting up a committee that would review harassment or complaints. I didn't hear a training component in that. How did that relate to training, if you could say in 15 seconds?
Well, the training component comes into play with the employees. And the problem I've stated is when there is a harassment complaint, it gets reviewed by the supervisor, and it's just not, it just doesn't seem right. I think it's really important.
Okay. Sorry. That's the time.
Okay.
Okay, we're going on to the next one, which is on communication, and this is to everybody. How will you improve internal and external communication as well as transparency? How would you balance the internal communications with the public's right to know? And we begin with you, Ms. Cortis.
Okay, so I think this topic is the root of trust issues that folks have in the community. One of the first things that we can do is hold quarterly forums where residents can directly engage with a whole town board or any town board member who so chooses to attend. This way, it's not on one person, it is on the entire town board who's been elected by people to report back to people. And I'd like to see it such that it's not limited to one topic, rather that it's more Q&A style. So I think that's something that's really, really important. I talked about in prior forums about updating the website. So, you know, just this transparency, right? So when are we testing our water? Are we going to show the water results? So this, I want to see it inherent in the next town board's DNA, that what we're doing, we're going to talk about at the town board table, that we're going to update a website that is easy to understand, in an easy to understand format, and people can find key pieces of information. So these are some of the things. Also internally, the communication right now does all go to the supervisor, to my knowledge. I would like to start to see our task forces, committees, and commissions that intersect sit down together. So Complete Streets, the Tree Committee, and housing. You know, these are interrelated topics that affect us, and I'd like to start to see a little bit more of this intersection of things that affect our lives so that we can be more productive that way. So internal communications, external communications, and amount of time.
Thank you. Ms. Moran,
Thank you. I'm sorry.
the question again. Communication, how will you improve internal and external communication as well as transparency? How would you balance the internal communications with the public's right to know?
Thank you. Okay, so transparency and accountability. True leadership means being accountable, and to be accountable, you need to be transparent. I think that being a true leader means listening to ideas, being open to those ideas, knowing when you don't have the best idea in the room, and being willing to go with something else. It's really easy to focus on the good decisions that are made, but sometimes you have a decision that was made that's not as successful, and it's important to be transparent with that as well, with the community, because it's important to learn from it. Earlier I was appointed to a task force. There was 8 of us, really diverse members of the community, 8 people including a chair, and there were some issues with the chair not really having a dialogue. There was communication, but there wasn't really listening and thoughtfulness when we all expressed ourselves. We came together as a committee and realized we weren't getting anywhere. We requested a new chair and we got one. That new chair expresses these components that are important. Transparency is key. As a task force, we're accountable to the public. We had to work on an issue. I'm trying to talk about this and not reveal too much for obvious reasons. But we had to ultimately be accountable to the people, and we had to remember that. It's really easy when things go your way, but true leaders make themselves accountable for both when they're successful and not. What's best for the community is what you need to make a priority, not what's your idea of what's best or what's best for you or your friends. It has to be for the good of Woodstock as a whole, and that's how we move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace?
Well, I've been a journalist for more than 30 years, written for the New York Times, Washington Post, Guardian, and I'd have to say that the public's right to know is paramount to me whenever possible. They need to know. Shouldn't have to foil every time if you want something from the town. Too often there's a culture of let's just say, not owning up to things and not being frank with people. Yes needs to mean yes, not no. We need to hire an independent hydrogeologist, right? And then we need to have that hydrogeologist be able to answer questions from members of the public and not have a situation where it's a town hall where questions are chosen and you're not really sure if you're going to ask a question. We just need an unfettered access to a genius hydrogeologist to help us finally clean up the illegal shady dump and make sure to protect our water supply. We need to develop regular town halls. I agree with Ms. Cordes on that. And have an open dialogue with town board members, and I think that they should also offer ideas. You could have like almost an idea day where people bring all their brilliant ideas, and there are so many brilliant people in Woodstock. It's like just filled with brilliant people, and they have a lot of ideas. Sometimes, you know, it's intense, but I would say that we can do more to communicate with them in a very frank, public way. I've talked about the website. It's terribly cluttered. My question is, what took us so long to finally clean it up? We're apparently going to do that. And make more archival documents, especially concerning water quality, available on the website.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Osmond.
Okay. Well, one of the things I learned on the school board is that you can never communicate too much. There is no such thing as over-communication, because you cannot assume that everyone is paying attention to every time you say something. You have to put it out there multiple times. I also have my BA in broadcast communications, and prior to, well, for 20 years I worked in marketing and publicity. So I understand the value of communication. I think that we need more issue forums like the one Anula created on water here at the community center. I think that those things are very, very valuable. I think that, as I mentioned before, we should be doing rolling quarterly reports from our department heads and our committees and our task forces, not to call anybody on the carpet, but to actually have just conversation. Okay, tell us what you're working on. Are there any issues? Do you need help with anything? And have discussion at the board table. I think that one of the things we need to do, obviously, is our website. I've been looking at other towns like Rochester or Marbletown or New Paltz, and they have much more cleanly designed, modern-looking, intuitive websites. Ours is way due for an overhaul, something that is much more user-friendly. Also, something that we always did on the school board, because as board president or vice president, which I was for many of my 14 years on the school board, I worked hand in hand with the other board officer and the superintendent to draft the meeting agendas. Those draft agendas always came out on a Friday, and we had meetings on Tuesdays as well. So that is important. We need the weekend to research things, to absorb information, not just as town board members, but as the public. So I think that that's very, very important. And I do believe, I also mentioned this too, we need to improve the audio and video quality of our town board recordings. We see other towns doing it. We can certainly do it with some of the surplus that we have. So those are some of the ideas, but yeah, we definitely can never stop communicating.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
I could talk about accountability and transparency till the cows come home. And it's been a real struggle. I'm the mad foiler once again, and I've had instances where I've foiled for documentation a week after it was generated, and it took 30 days to get it, and it was a critical communication. I've also foiled for information that was about critical communications. I got so frustrated in getting the information, I went to the Attorney General and foiled them, and then I got the information that should have been provided by the town of Woodstock, and I had to engage in debates about the reason why the town of Woodstock still had the requirement to produce that information. Town halls are great. We had a town hall on water was hosted by a board member and other people involved. The Woodstockers United for Change did not feel that was clearly transparent at all, and they put together their own town hall on water. Some of them critical communications that I had received from the Attorney General were known before that water town hall regarding the water, and those communications were about Shady Dump. But we weren't allowed to ask questions about Shady Dump at the town hall. That's not being transparent. Transparency can happen at every town board meeting, and one of the things I've said is I am going to bring the conversations and the documentation to the people. When our town board meeting maybe lasts 20 minutes, there's ample time to fill in the general public about a lot of different things. There's also been a recent resolution to put the Shady Dump on the town board agenda. Why isn't it on the town board agenda yet? We went through this before the last primary. We're going through it again, and it's got to stop.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Are we ready? This is, again, one for the supervisor, one for the town council, but it's really basically the same question. It's just looking at it from a different perspective. What will you do to improve collaboration between the supervisor's department with and among the town council? And I would add to that, which is not in this question, I would add, how would you deal with disagreements to foster collaboration? And we begin with Ms. Moran.
Thank you. As we know, the town board meetings have deteriorated to not being very productive, not getting a lot of stuff done. They've had to be cut short because they've gotten out of hand. And that's embarrassing as a town, especially Woodstock, New York. I think as residents, when we witness our own town board members attacking each other verbally or the supervisor, and other members don't say anything, I think silence is complicit. It's just not acceptable. We have to start leading by example. We have to start demonstrating that we're going to be respectful from the minute these meetings start until they end. This toxic environment that has been created on social media, I keep telling people, just don't engage, walk away. We need to respect each other whether we like each other or not. I've actually had conversations with everyone running, and I've said, we're gonna work together. I don't know who's gonna win, but we're gonna work together. And I've gotten some really positive feedback. And on that note, I would just like to say, we are really brave for stepping up at this time. I think there would be more people up here if they weren't fearful of the repercussions. The supervisor and the town board are a collective unit. It is a 5-person company, ship, whatever you want to call it. We need to move forward. We need to get along. Whoever gets elected, if I'm elected as supervisor, I will work with those people. We will do what we need to do. You're hearing us say a lot of the same things. There's a lot of the same compassion and ideas. And I think that's because we really do want to see a difference moving forward. We're going to be in the fortunate space of having new faces.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Well, people in Woodstock like to complain a lot. It's sort of a national pastime to some extent. And they complain about how you complain. Once I saw online that folks were saying, we gotta take the tenor down, keep calmer. And a response was, stop it with your toxic positivity. And that has stuck with me. My mouth flew open because I just thought that was the great opportunity for getting along. Disagreements are gonna happen. They need to be handled in a reasonable, adult, calm way with respect. And the old saying, right? You can disagree, but don't be disagreeable. So I would get a coach, just like we had at the school board. We had a coach who, we had 7 members. Some of them were on the far right. Some of them, like me, were more on the left. We all got along for the most part, and I'm really proud to say that most of my colleagues who I worked with are supporting me, whether they're Republicans or they're Democrats for this job. So I never stab people in the back. It's just not my nature. I might talk to them in the front. And I think being a blunt but honest communicator goes a long way. And I think it will improve. I think there'll be no more toxic positivity. Hopefully the council will be just positivity.
Thank you. Ms. Cordes, you have it now. Okay, Ms. Cordes.
All right. That was a tough one to follow. Okay, so I have decades in the business world, not perfect. 9 years in Woodstock, dedicating my time as a volunteer, and in the last 1.5 years as a town board member, not perfect. But the things that work, number 1, the desire to change. Number 2, keep an open mind and listen to people. Number 3, come back, don't scream at people, don't disrupt and undermine meetings in an effort to hurt other people, but real collaboration. We're gonna disagree. I also am the only person sitting at this table right now who has experience on the town board vigorously disagreeing with multiple people on the town board, whether it is in executive session, where most of the disagreements happen about really important matters that affect our town. Those things don't make it to the table. So what I try to do is to maintain my integrity. Again, not perfect, and these things are heated. They involve big matters that affect this town: water, police, ethics, etc. But it takes somebody who's not going to look to hurt somebody else, such that you can't disagree and then shake hands at the end of the day and maybe go have a glass of wine with that person. That's what I feel it comes down to. And do not disrespect people. No one wants to be shamed in their community, and we do a lot of that here. And I think that we do too much of that here, and I do agree with the point that that's why more people are not sitting at this table. So we all have a role in it. People who are watching the bashing, people who are participating in it, and my time's up.
Thank you. Okay, similar, what will you do to improve collaboration between the council and the supervisor? And again, I'm adding, how would you deal with disagreements? And it begins with Mr. Nagle, right? Wait, let me get to this. Yes, I have it as Mr. Nagle.
You know, collaboration is great, and you have to be open and transparent to achieve it. It's just a really difficult thing over the last 10 years or so, especially the last 5 years with the water and all of that. We have had town board members and government representatives that have just flat out lied to the people. My job if I get elected as a town board member would be to step in when I see those misrepresentations. The social media thing, I know it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, and I'm on social media all the time. I never did it before until the Shady Dump situation. The people were blocked out of the process. They were misled or misinformed. It was selective and distorted information. They took to social media because it was the only avenue of communication and to get the word out that they had. The town board meetings there's been a number of them that were shut down. We've been cursed at. It's just been unacceptable behavior. The conversations need to take place at the town board meetings, and we all do have to work together. And the current environment in the town, you're correct. We are all brave stepping up to this task. But I'm here, and I can handle the task and take the heat, and I'm going to do everything I can to work with people and set my prior differences aside, as long as we can look at a document that says a site is contaminated and we need to remediate it, or a police officer was improperly behaving and we need to remedy that. Whatever it is, the facts are the facts. That's how I do business.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond?
So I think we definitely need to improve collaboration all the way around. I think one of the things that spurred me and many of us to run was just witnessing the toxicity of the way that our town board meetings deteriorated. It just needed to stop. So one of the things I'd like to see is more collaboration prior to meetings. My understanding is that there's a lot of email and back and forth discussion before something goes on the agenda, and while we don't need overly long meetings, I think we need more discussion prior to votes during town board meetings. For example, again, when I was on the school board, we always made it a policy never to take a vote on something the first meeting it was raised at. We need to be able to do more discussion and collaboration. I will work with anyone respectfully, and I expect that in return. We can agree to disagree without going into personal attacks. We've all seen what's happened on social media, and it just makes you not want to be involved. So I appreciate everyone who does want to be involved. I think we can also collaborate more with the public and with our volunteers. We've had volunteers in departments and task forces. As I mentioned, I think we should be doing quarterly meetings and reports with them, but we've had people put in a lot of time for naught. Or for a very delayed response. I think that's really demoralizing to people. And I think that, God forbid, if anything gets so bad that town board members can't work with each other, then professional development needs to be brought in. We did that on the school board as well. Team building, working through differences in executive session to be able to just do the work of the people, because that's what they're there, that's what we're there for. We're supposed to be getting the work done and moving the town forward, and we can't let personal differences stand in the way of that. We have to collaborate.
Thank you. Okay, we're shifting gears now. We're going specifically looking at Woodstock Police. So to put your Woodstock Police hat on. This is to all candidates. The situation facing the Woodstock Police Department is complex and requires many skills mentioned in our discussion about management and accountability. First, what do you think are the 3 main issues facing the police department, and which one would you tackle first? And we begin with Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. I support the police. They have a tough, demanding, and dangerous job. We should thank them for keeping us safe. But this department's management has been problematic. Morale is poor. There is a hostile workplace culture which cost taxpayers, a $70,000 EEOC settlement, not to mention the cost of paying one officer to sit in a rubber room. We own police bicycles that no one rides. We have body cameras that no one wears. We have outdated tasers. In 2021, the Woodstock Police Reform and Reinvention Committee issued a report. Anula Cordes and the chief were members. The committee offered many recommendations, such as significantly increasing crisis intervention team training until, quote, most full and part-time officers have been trained. It's a free 40-hour course that teaches de-escalation, as well as how to deal with people who are in a mental health crisis, and that didn't happen. Another recommendation called for reactivating the, quote, long dormant police department website. Well, 4 years later, Woodstock has an impressive police department website. Only problem is it's the Woodstock, Vermont Police Department. We don't have a website. The committee called for an officer support program focused on mental health. That did not happen. Many recommendations did not happen. So if elected, I will encourage the chief to retire, or I will work with the town board to remove him. I appreciate his long service to the town, but it is time to not just talk about accountability, but to actually hold government accountable.
Okay, thank you. Passing that along. Okay, Ms. Cordes.
Okay. So David mentioned some of the items that I'm not going to repeat. I was on the police task force some years ago. We did make those recommendations. I think that every single recommendation still stands. There is a new police reimagination task force, and I believe that really great recommendations are going to come out of that. But the three big issues facing the police force: number one, legal challenges. I'm gonna take a step back. Our police officers are amazing human beings, amazing men and women who help us, and that really cannot be overemphasized. However, within the department, there are legal challenges that really require policy changes, literal Woodstock law changes, and a town board willing to enforce the law that this town has. So no delayed responses to any issue that comes out of that police department. We have a 60-day time frame for, if anything goes wrong, for a chain of command, including the chief and or the supervisor and or town board, in which to respond to issues, and we must adhere to that. And I'd like to see that strengthened. Morale is the second issue. I think that ties into many different things. Again, some David mentioned, every one of them stands. Mental health, free training that we should be requiring. But the third one that I want to bring up is we have a little bit of a transient police force, and we have police officers who come here, get to know us, and they leave. And I'd like to see us start to build a police force who get to know us, and have room for them to grow in our community and stay here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Moran.
Thank you. The police department starts with the chief, who's in the back of the room, listening very intently, I'm sure. The police department is only going to be as good as their leader. Their leader is responsible for the officers, the staff, and really the general public. It reminds me of Miracle on the Hudson, where Sully landed that plane on the Hudson. Hopefully you're all aware of it. I was actually working at the time in the city and saw that plane slowly go down the Hudson. I'll probably never forget it and how people reacted. Sully, the pilot, was responsible for the staff, making sure that they had what they needed to do their job. He was responsible for the passengers. Didn't meet them, didn't know them, but he was responsible for their safety, getting them to from point A to B, and ultimately for their lives. He also went one step further by landing in the Hudson. He protected the general public. If he had landed where he was being told to, there would have been more casualties. I'm talking about this because I think it's a good analogy to our police department. We need a chief of police that shows up and that leads by example, who offers transparency to the community and who listens to all sides. We need a chief of police who's going to offer training. Many of our officers are missing training that is the basic training. I'm not just talking firearms, I'm talking mental health crisis. When they show up on a call, they need to know how to handle mental health crisis. De-escalation, things like this. Other police departments, they have this training, there's no cost. Our chief of police needs to be transparent and show up and be present. Otherwise, he holds a badge without a backbone.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond?
So I think a lot of good points have already been raised. I think the morale of the police department is incredibly important. Our police officers are, for the large part, really wonderful, dedicated people, and they need to feel safe and secure within their workplace in order to make us feel safe and secure. And we need to know that if there are any members of the police force that do not respect people for whatever category they are in, that causes me great concern, because how does that play out in their interactions with the public? So I think training is really, really important. I think morale is critical. Our police officers deserve to be supported. They do great work, and they are people who understand our community for the large part. I do agree that our officers have been transient. I think that rather than people passing through here, we need our officers to remain, because we are a unique community, and we can't assume that we should be treated like the community that these people just came from. I mean, obviously laws are laws, and law enforcement is important, but I think officers really need to have an understanding of who Woodstockers are, and become part of the fabric of the town, whether they live here or not. But I do think that they should remain. And I agree that and I do think we should have a legal audit, actually, impartial, of the policies and practices of the police department, to review what's been going on, what could be improved, and how leadership, whoever is leading the police department, can move forward with innovation and bringing the Woodstock Police Department together to a unit that the community feels good about, and a place where the officers within it feel safe and respected.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel?
I don't have the advantage of sitting in on the police task force, but I do believe something went drastically wrong in that department, and I believe it's centered around morale and possibly, most likely, I guess, not enough training. My interactions with the police have always been great, and they actually responded to a personal tragedy for me years ago, and they supported me. I've had interactions with them along the roadside, at vehicle accidents. I've been pulled over because I didn't turn a light switch on and my taillights weren't working. They were always very professional with me and easy to get along with. But, you know, that's the side that I've experienced. I don't know what went on inside, behind the scenes. It's a big problem, but one of the things that bothers me tremendously, and I think it's what has led to the moral decay of the department, is there was a requirement that an officer would have a hearing within 60 days. Now, I've not read the court papers about the police department like I have the Shady Dump, but I did read one part where it says that hearing was supposed to happen within 60 days, and at the time the court papers were filed, it was at 555 days, and that officer still had not had his hearing. So once again, we have allegations of sexual harassment and workplace harassment and all of that. The complaint went to the supervisor, and that's why I feel we need to have an independent committee or with a human resources officer or professional that would mediate them complaints and take it out of the town board and the supervisor's hands.
Thank you. Just for those folks who are fidgeting, I just want to let you know we have 2 more questions and then be the closing statement. So here's question 7. What is your understanding of the town's legal role in reshaping the police department and handling the issues facing it? What other institutions or entities would you employ to solve the problem and make changes? And we begin with Ms. Cordes.
So the town has an absolute legal role in reshaping the police department. And we're starting down the path with this police reimagination task force. However, like the last task force that was earlier mentioned, every recommendation could be ignored, or we could sit down and start to adopt those recommendations and get them in place. The role is town working with county, town working with state. One for funding, one for collaboration in the case of any type of an emergency. Also, maybe folks know, maybe folks don't know, if a call goes into 911, it might not be a Woodstock police officer who will respond to you. It could be a county, someone from the county sheriff's department or a state trooper. The reason is that whoever is closest will respond to help you, and as it should be. So whatever we do here should be communicated very thoroughly to everybody else, and also not disrupt what they're doing, and let's not disrupt what works. So I do think we have a really big role. And number 2, I think that training intersects here with a police chief, because that is a tough job, and absolute training and management training is required, especially within that type of a chain of command environment. There's also collaboration with fire. There are opportunities to work very closely with fire and EMS. So again, a call comes into 911 or to Woodstock Dispatch, and the first people on the scene might be fire, they might be EMS, police, and all these agencies interact together. And so the town has a responsibility to ensure that
Thank you.
everybody works well together.
Ms. Moran.
Thank you. To my understanding, the town board appoints the chief of police. To my understanding, things have deteriorated such that I don't understand, and it truly is probably because of lack of information. I understand it's sensitive. I don't understand why the town board couldn't be more involved in correcting this before it got to where it is now. I think that our police officers are very dedicated to this town. I think we should continue the conversations that we're having with them on the task force. I think that we should offer them more pay. That's one of the reasons we keep losing them. They come here, they get hired, and they go somewhere else because there's more pay. It's a pretty simple problem to solve. We need leadership that leads by example. I just can't really emphasize that enough. I think we also, as far as setting the setup and the way it is now, some things have fallen through the cracks. I think we're in the situation we're in because things weren't followed through on. One thing that I would insist upon is that, to my understanding, the chief of police is actually not a member of the union, because that's normal, because everyone else is, they are not. But the chief of police usually has a contract. Ours does not. I think this is what will hold the leader accountable. If there's an understanding of what's expected, and that's not happening, then you take the next steps. It also gives that leader the knowledge of knowing exactly what is expected of them. I think a contract would be huge. I think that the town board should take a more active role. And ultimately, we really need better leadership, better pay. Our police force is wonderful, very dedicated. I've talked to them, and they really do care about this community and the people.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Well, I don't think that another task force is the way to go. We had a task force that worked for more than a year, produced a very lengthy report, and I encourage people to read it. It was issued in 2021, and then it was largely ignored. That's the way things happen in this town often. I think that we have a huge liability on our hands. Clearly, we have spent $70,000 in an EEOC settlement, plus lawyer fees, who knows how much that is, plus the salary for our officer in a rubber room, as well as the ongoing lawsuit. He's now suing us. So we may never get to a point where we have that hearing. It was clear that the supervisor named himself investigator for the EEOC claim. That's nuts. I mean, that's just really something that we should never have done. We should have hired a third-party law firm. And yeah, it would have cost money, folks. That's life. It would have cost some money, but a third-party law firm that specializes in police investigations. That's what we should have done. That's what I would have done. We are losing police officers not because of the salary, really. I think we're losing police officers because Woodstock is now known as a lousy place to work. And several officers said so.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel?
So we can talk about the police force, and there's one thing that so far none of us up here has said. And that is that if there has been a hostile work environment involving sexual harassment that has been condoned by anybody, it's unacceptable. If it wasn't properly followed up by the town board, that is unacceptable. And if those instances of unacceptable delegation of responsibility and successful remediation have not happened properly, then I'm going to apologize for everybody that comes before me. I have empathy for the victims of any type of sexual harassment or workplace violence. I filed a complaint against a committee member, and it was not properly handled, as far as that's my opinion. And I also assisted another resident of our community in filing a harassment complaint that I also feel was not properly handled. So the improper handling of these instances, it's very prevalent in this town. The Woodstock Police, them and the fire department are key to the public safety, and they are critical, and we need to support that department and get it straightened out and back on track, and it can't be done fast enough. The task force is going to come up hopefully with some good ideas. Let's not put that file on the shelf again like we often do with the task force. And let's get it moving in the right direction. And if there's bad players that routinely violate the employee handbook, they need to go. It's as simple as that. I don't know who they are when it comes to the police, but we're going to find out.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond?
Okay. So when the allegations of sexual harassment and workplace harassment were first raised, and they were pretty horrific if you read what was supposedly said and done. The supervisor should never have appointed himself as the sole investigator in one-on-one interviews. That's just not what should have happened. An independent legal counsel should have been brought in immediately to interview all the members of the police department and to really make a determination as to what had transpired. I think that would have really reduced the town's liability, and now we're in a mess. And that's not okay. I mean, it's the town supervisor and the town board's responsibility to the town to keep us free from liability as much as possible. So I definitely think that was mishandled, and then the ball was dropped. I think that one of the things legally that we should be looking at reshaping, or not legally, but reshaping, is I think we do need a town-wide alert system. It costs only about $5,000 a year, and that would send out alerts to every Woodstocker, as I said before, whether it's through their landline, a text message, or calling their cell phone to let them know when something happens, like is there a fire, has an oil truck overturned, things like that. Is there, flooding? These things would be very, very important, and I think that they would help our emergency services a lot because everyone would be aware of things right away. I think that we do have to make sure that we are paying our officers so that we can retain them and they don't move on, because we really need officers who want to remain here and, as I said before, become a trusted fabric, part of the fabric of this community. And regardless of who the police chief is, I think continuing education is very, very important for best practices and innovation. Thank you.
This last question, and it is the last question before the final statements, is more specific, although some of you touched on it in terms of the employee harassment. And I noted in the general one about who you could collaborate and so forth, no one specifically mentioned unions. So I'm going to add to the question, the last question is, how would you handle the situation with employee harassment in general and with Officer Sinagra specifically, and what position, what role do you think the union plays in how you would handle the situation? And we begin with Ms. Moran.
I apologize. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How would you handle the situation with employee harassment in general and with Officer Sinagra specifically, and what role would you use the union, or what role would the union play?
Yeah, I don't know if we can talk about this. There's an ongoing lawsuit, and I see things going on. There's a current lawsuit.
Okay, there's a
And
current
I don't think that we should be,
Okay,
because
fine.
you mentioned the
Okay,
person. Maybe
okay,
revise it.
I will respect that. Can you answer in general terms, how would you handle a situation of an employee harassment in general?
Okay.
And what position does the union play?
Okay. So one thing I learned is there are actually several unions with the town employees. I believe our highway department is part of one, as well as the police department, and I think there's another one. I was surprised. I come from a generation where I thought unions were pretty much just teachers and that's it. I think that I've heard some frustration with that liaison between the union and the employees. I don't know much about unions, but I have heard from the employees who are part of one, there is a lot of frustration, a feeling of not being heard. I think that needs to be looked into. So speaking generally, there is a process for these things, and processes exist for a reason. They make sure that you take care of everything, that you don't leave any stone unturned. I think that formalizing this process and actually getting it in writing is something the town is lacking. I think it stems from us being a smaller town where a lot of people knew each other and we've grown over the years. I think incorporating these things, what employees are part of unions, what the union can and can't do, what a union employee can and can't do, civil service, etc. I think getting this information all in one place together, standardized, so that the town board can collectively make better decisions because we have better information in front of us. And that's what I would do, is focus on the relationship and the actual factual information about the can and can'ts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wallace, again, keeping it to the general
I'll
employee
keep it
harassment
general. Let me
and the
specify
role of
one
union.
thing.
And the role of the union.
I won't have a freak out in the middle of a forum if I'm elected supervisor and then storm off. So I see you. It's not supervisor time. I'm sorry, Jeff. I am responding to a situation that is occurring right now. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm going to answer my question, Jeff. And I would not have, had a disruption like that. That's the first thing. I believe that we have botched this job in terms of Sinagra over and over and over again.
Talk in general terms at this point.
We can say what we think about Sinagra
Well,
without.
The question at this point, let me deal with this, please, thank you. The question now is generalized because I was not aware what was handed to me, but there's an ongoing lawsuit,
Yeah.
so let's keep it in
Yeah,
general terms.
I'm not actually a public official right now,
Okay,
so I am able
okay,
to speak if
but
I
the-
want
but
to
the re-
about.
But the
about-
request is
about
in
Sinagra.
general
Yeah, I
and
hear
the
you.
union, okay? Thank
The
you.
union wouldn't even protect Sinagra, okay? That's the reality. And I believe he deserves due process. I believe that we didn't do a good job on that. And I would, police officers can be fired. And we have fired police officers before. Now, with a part-time officer, there's a time limit. And we can certainly terminate that officer and then deal with the consequences. And that's probably what I would have done.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind, again, it's general in terms of all employees, it's not just the police, okay? So about harassment.
Okay. So first and foremost, establish a zero tolerance policy with teeth. One that's not just words on a page, but one that's supported by policy, process, and what is called an ombudsman or some outside human resource professional who actually understands how to handle very complicated matters. The union, I have participated in union discussions, both for police and for other organizations, other departments. They do not necessarily get involved by contract in human resource matters. They're more for pay, days off, things like that I don't want to go into because it's such a very limited time here. So some of the things that I would like to see so that we move this discussion to be productive is to get a human rights commission going in this town again. Again, a very empowered one that actually has real authority to work with this ombudsman or human resource group to review policies, investigate complaints, and make binding recommendations. We're missing that. I want to, specific to police, I want to see a fast track to state accreditation. So that's something that holds us up to a certain standard. And I'd also like to have an outside experienced consultant conduct a comprehensive review of all of our 100+ policies. And also, there should be mandatory training, probably for everybody involved at this point. So elected and not elected, so that we all understand what we can and cannot do, and we don't spend our time arguing about things that we want to do but may not be able to do. I also think that going back to policies, I'd like to see the town board, the next town board really commit to and understanding.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond.
Thank you for revising the question. I feel like that was a lawsuit waiting to happen. We are not attorneys, none of us on the board or running for board. We are not attorneys, or we are not human resources experts. We should have HR services or an HR consultant, and we should have an independent legal counsel involved if necessary in any case of employee harassment when it comes to town staff. That's just, it's not our area of expertise. We should pretend that it is, and we should immediately take action and bring in experts to deal with it. We also should, I believe, agreeing with Anula, that we should have a zero tolerance policy that is clearly communicated, especially in annual trainings with town employees, so it is crystal clear that there are certain behaviors that will not be tolerated and that will have consequences. Beyond that, that is my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
Generally speaking, I believe that when you read the employee handbook and go through all that, it pretty well spells out what expected conduct is expected to be. I do believe we should have a zero tolerance because we just can't have it in the workplace because we end up in trouble. We do need a human resources officer, and in these instances where there are horrible accusations of sexual harassment and workplace harassment and violence, absolutely, although I don't like paying lawyers, we should engage a lawyer to mediate those processes. It's unreasonable to expect town board members to be able to mediate and investigate and hand down a valid determination regarding any of these situations. It's a very specialized field. We don't have the ability to do it, and we shouldn't be expected to do it. We have to bring in professionals when it's necessary, and in the instances of these complaints, that's when it's necessary.
Thank you. So at this particular point, before we go to the closing statements, Lily Karloff, who couldn't be here, sent in a statement that I'd like to read. And I'm reading it cold, folks. It's the first time I'm seeing it, so here we go. First, I would like to apologize for not being able to participate in tonight's forum, but I had a memorial for a very important person in my life that took precedence. The topic at hand is fairly general, but also innately complex and wide-reaching. I'm going to start with what management accountability mean to me in general, as a union worker and as a business owner. I have always known that any fault or lapse in my judgment or work standard reflects negatively upon the whole of the crew and produces a domino effect. When someone at the top is not responsive or becomes complacent or simply becomes too burned out to be an effective leader, things go wrong and it trickles down throughout the organization. When responsibilities are left untended, others feel that they too can lapse in their duties. When toxic attitudes are accepted as the norm, others adopt them as well. That being said, even the best leaders will err because they are human. But owning any error and trying to correct it is an essential skill of an effective leader, and the ability to pivot and rethink a position is critical to substantive policy building. Owning one's wrongs is the cornerstone of accountability, and I think that it is important to acknowledge that elected officials are still human beings, but as public servants, ego should not play a part the way it often does. Having a strong ethics code and a strong code of conduct is essential to prevent abuses of power. For years, the Town Ethics Board has made a series of recommendations that has gone unimplemented. They have continually received complaints of harassing, intimidating, and otherwise inappropriate conduct by elected town officials, but note that type of conduct falls outside the scope of the ethics law. They have repeatedly suggested that the town board adopt a general code of conduct, and that would apply to itself and other elected officials, and have asked for training to be provided on the employee handbook and ethics law for all town employees and volunteers. But that guidance has also not been adopted. If I were to be elected to the town board, I would work to strengthen our ethics laws, adopt an enforceable code of conduct, and push to ensure a safe and equitable work environment for all departments of the town. On to policing. In many ways, we are blessed to have a police department like the Woodstock Police Department. I have seen a level of compassion, integrity, understanding, and professionalism that many communities only dream of. They deal with people with mental health issues daily, interact with the community on a human level, and understand the intricacies of the town, and are fair yet stern backbone to the order of the community. However, there are flies in the honey. From 2020 to 2021, there was a Woodstock Police Reform and Reinvention Committee, and among their recommendations were a reactivated Woodstock Police Department website with direct and immediate access to the police department for our community, as well as monthly activity reports and an officer complaint report. None of that has happened. Also recommended was creating a Woodstock Community Police Advisory Committee by the end of 2021. That has not happened either. I will say that as a woman who worked in a very male-dominated industry, who did have to find dark corners to use her breast pump while on gigs, I find a lot of the stories coming out of our police department and the response to them infuriating. If the purpose of our police department is to maintain a safe and secure environment for the town, then that ethos has to begin from within. Protecting the people who are protecting us and not silencing internal conflict is critical to ensure that abuses of power are addressed in a timely and appropriate fashion. That's Lily's statement. Okay. Are you ready for your 3 minutes to give your final statement? It's 3 minutes summarizing your vision and offering, they're suggesting here is offering 3 short-term and 3 long-term goals. Don't do that if that's not part of your final statement. And this is an opportunity to answer questions that have not been asked and should have maybe been asked, okay? And we're going to begin with Mr. Wallace, 3 minutes. Look, wait. He's got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Need a few seconds for my handoff. Thank you. First off, I want to thank my wife, Penny. She's still mad at me for running, but she's been in my corner for 22 years and counting. And on a daily basis, she reminds me that I'm the most lucky guy. People often come up to me and say, "Why do you want this job?" But it isn't a question. It means, are you nuts? Why do you want this job? I'm not nuts. I just believe that Woodstock deserves a more effective, compassionate government that improves people's lives. Mario Cuomo famously said, "You campaign in poetry, you govern in prose." I'm not much of a poet, so let me offer specifics. If elected, I'll hire an independent hydrogeologist to create an action plan to finally clean up the illegal shady dump that threatens our water supply. I won't wait for the state to one day come to the rescue, maybe never. If Woodstock is known not as a colony of the arts, but for dirty drinking water, then we all suffer, as will our property values. I'll expand the tax exemption for seniors and disabled residents and eliminate summer camp tuition for low-income residents. And I won't raise your taxes when we rack up a big surplus like the current government did last year. Woodstock must be more affordable for people who are just hanging on. I support building a new youth center, but for anything beyond that one building, I would wait until we raise every dollar we need from philanthropy or from the state before burdening taxpayers with tens of millions in added debt. But I will invest in a full-time professional grant writer to help committees achieve their goals, our goals. I'll improve how we communicate. I bet we can find a sound engineer in Woodstock to improve town board meetings. It's your government, and you deserve to hear it. And how is it possible that we lack an automated emergency alert system to reach residents by text, email, and phone in a crisis? I'll increase the maintenance staff so we no longer have axle-busting potholes in parking lots. And I'll fix the leaking roof, finally, on the highway department building, because one of our employees there got shot, and it shouldn't take an electrocution or an election to get things done in this town. I will address the lack of a warming and cooling center so our most vulnerable neighbors have a safe, welcoming place to go on freezing nights or sweltering days. If we market ourselves as a town of peace and love, we should have a government that reflects those values. Thank you for listening. I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Cordes.
Thank you. We have gone through hours and hours going through the topics, and I'm gonna touch on things very lightly here in my closing statement. But first and foremost, I wanna say thank you to everybody who's sitting here. You know, here we are on a Sunday afternoon, and this is exactly what a community looks like. People sitting together, talking, listening, questions coming in, and thank you also to the Democratic Committee for all of their hard work and giving us the place and the space for really going in depth on really important topics, which I guess are all on YouTube. But, you know, I'm running because of community. This is exactly why I decided to step up for all of us, for the Woodstock that we love. I moved here because I love this town and my family loves it, and I've got new family and friends, and I intend to grow more roots here. So I want to share a little bit for those who don't know about me, what I've done and who I am. I am a first-generation American. The reason that I bring that up really is because from my parents, I did learn everything that I needed to know about some core values. Work hard, stay grounded, stand up for what's right, most especially when it's hard. And that's how I've built my life. I entered the business world when I'm 19. I founded 3 healthcare technology companies, led teams, managed millions in revenue. I built real solutions that worked, and I also built solutions that did not work. And that's something that I learned from, more than those things that did work. I know how to navigate complex systems. I know how to lead during chaos. I know how to get results. And I brought that same drive home to Woodstock. I co-founded the Women's March. I chaired a Human Rights Commission for 4 years. In 2024, I stepped into a town board that had all of these difficult topics that we're talking about. And I jumped into it. I helped to secure a 10% property tax break for our fire and rescue workers. I organized a public call on water safety and brought state and county officials together to help educate people. I chaired a bear task force and worked with kids, scientists, and artists to build a community for young artists. And in an effort to protect people and our wildlife, because I care very deeply. But more than that, I'm the person with the experience. The person in this race who has the experience to help fix, with your help, the problems that we're facing, from shady dump to unsafe roads, from broken trust to a broken process. I've lived this, I've led through it, and I've solved harder problems with fewer resources. This campaign's about smart housing, safe streets, transparent government, and a town that works for everyone. It's about protecting the land, water, and wildlife that we love. And yes, it's about arts and music, because this is Woodstock, and this is part of our soul and our survival.
Thank you. Ms. Moran.
Thank you. Because I only have 3 minutes, if you want to find out more about me, you can go to my website and see all my qualifications. But what I do want to point out is I am the only candidate for supervisor up here that actually grew up here. I've been here for more than 30 years. Woodstock truly has a place in my heart. I'm the only person up here that has significant experience managing a multi-million-dollar budget. These are the things that matter. I know what fiscal responsibility is. I understand bond ratings. I'd like to see some of the surplus money go to the community, something like with the youth center project, something we can all enjoy and experience. I have experience with staffing people, with employees, treating them with dignity, mentoring them, helping them grow. It's good, overall, it's a good thing. It's a smart move because overall, everyone is happier, and that makes for a great business, company, or town. I will continue to protect the environment as I have. As many of you know, I've been a champion on the Environmental Commission. When I talk about my experience on the Environmental Commission, I do say a lot of we's. I do not say I, because we really were a great team. We were passionate and we all cared about this town. I still have that passion and I still care, which is why I'm up here today. I will work to bring affordable housing with green developers. I went to Woodstock Elementary in Ontario. I will advocate to keep that school open because that's part of our community. If we need to entice young families here through affordable housing, we need to have an elementary school for the children. All of this are components of what makes a community a community. I will continue working to make the police department better. I think talking to them, being on the task force has been huge. I've learned a lot. There are some really good things to come, and I'm very, very hopeful. I will take time to do all of this, but it's gonna be a group effort with the town board and the supervisor. There's been too much disagreement between the town board and all 5 people. I'm just gonna say the town board. It's really time that we have a collaborative effort and we all get together. It's gonna take time, be patient, but it's gonna happen. If elected as supervisor, I will be fair and thorough. Thank you for showing up and listening, and I hope I have your vote on June 24th at the primary. I will work tirelessly for Woodstock.
Thank you. So now we're Mr. Nagel.
I thank the Woodstock Democratic Committee and the many people who have attended or viewed these forums because they care about our town. I also thank the other candidates sitting next to me answering tough questions due to their willingness to step up and serve. Again, I never expected to be here. I'm not a polished politician or a public speaker, but I am a problem solver, and there are urgent problems that have been neglected far too long. This is a critical time in Woodstock's history in which we can either continue on the path that has brought us more pollution, more unaffordability, and more incivility, or we can chart a new path to repair, remediate, and revitalize our town. I've been pushing for solutions, accountability, and transparency as a private citizen, and I will do more as an elected representative. I don't come from privilege. I've had to work for everything I've achieved. That's the only way I know how to conduct business. Therefore, I make the following promises. I will do everything in my power to assure that Woodstock has safe drinking water, that all potential contamination sites, including Shady, are independently and professionally investigated and tested, and that effective remediation efforts are achieved through proper process. I will work to find innovative, practical solutions to our affordable housing crisis while protecting our town from overdevelopment and damage to our environment. I will be a voice for artists, our workers, and our volunteers. I'll be a voice for our families, many of which are struggling, as my family did, and for our seniors. I'll also be a strong voice for our homeless and otherwise vulnerable populations who deserve at least a place to be safe and comfortable during weather or power emergencies or any other peril that comes along. I owe no allegiance to any predecessor, friend, or donor because I've never played political games for my own advantage. My only allegiance will be to the town I've spent over 40 years working and living in, the truth and full transparency. I'm asking the voters for the opportunity to serve this community as a true leader, not as a typical politician. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you'll come out and vote for me and give me the chance to really step up to the plate and get this community back on track.
Thank you. Ms. Osmond?
I've lived in Woodstock for 20 years and served on the Ontario Board of Education for 14 of those years. I was board president or vice president for most of that time and was part of $50 million budget discussions, confidential personnel matters, lawsuit deliberations, organizational debates, future planning, and I also spent many years of that on the policy committee reviewing and crafting policy for the school district. I also briefly served as Woodstock Deputy Town Supervisor. I ran my own video production company for over 15 years, budgeting, scheduling, hiring, and getting things done on time. I have the background and the experience to be a strong and effective member of the town board. I raised my daughter here, and I'm part of many circles that make up our town. I'm a hard worker, a good listener, a connector, and I strive for balance. I'm passionate about Woodstock. It's a unique, quirky, and beautiful place that I feel lucky to call home, and we can do better with our home government. The shady landfill has to be removed one way or another. Source testing, well monitoring, filtration, and community awareness need to happen. We have an affordable housing crisis. People young and old cannot find affordable places to live in Woodstock. We have to increase our housing stock through partnerships with nonprofits and also by creating ways to return short-term rentals to long-term rentals, whether by changes in regulation, tax incentives, or both. We need to find ways to partner to create right-sized affordable housing, looking at co-housing models, limited numbers of builds, using floating residential districts, and preserving and providing green spaces in any new development. Both the town board and the planning board need to have oversight together. We've got to strike a balance between preserving our rural character and creating places for people to live. Doing nothing is not the answer. The town needs to complete its public review of the proposal from the Sound Ordinance Task Force and tweak them a bit to reflect more realistic solutions in terms of hours, days, decibel limits, and measurement standards. Woodstock needs to live up to its comprehensive plan and create and promote arts events and our artists. Other towns like Saugerties and Kingston are doing a better job than we are, and that's got to change. We've got to do a better job of maintaining our public spaces, sidewalks, and parking lots. This is a public safety issue. The people of this town, and we also need to continue to fight for Woodstock Elementary, something I've been deeply involved in. The people of this town deserve effective, transparent, and collaborative town government where issues are communicated clearly and the greater good drives decisions, not just the loudest or the most influential. We've got to move Woodstock forward, and we need to harness the spirit, creativity, and accepting nature of this town and make it an example of how things should be done, and I want to be a part of that, so I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Okay, I have now Ms. Kolikoff's closing statement. Here it is. Again, I'm reading it cold. Please forgive me. I absolutely never expected to be in this role. I have always had a distaste for politics because I believe it brings out the worst in people. But I decided to run for town board because I believe in the power of people, especially the little people, the people whose voices and needs are often overshadowed by political maneuvering. I am not a politician. I am running because I am affected by the issues we've discussed at these forums as much as anybody in this town. I know how hard it is to raise a family here. I understand housing insecurity and how it feels to be a renter, knowing that at any time the place you call home could be sold out from under you or turned into a short-term rental. I am a small business owner and recognize the necessity of tourism, but also know how long and lonely winters can be without year-round residents to support our local economy. I am a mom to a wonderful kid who wants to fight to keep his school open and has had to experience friends moving away because of affordability or housing issues. We need balance. We need action. The more research I do about past practices and policies, the more perturbed I am about how ineffective our government has been. We are blessed with so many creative thinkers and volunteers that pour time and energy into trying to find solutions for various issues. But we are regularly mired down in controversy and disagreement and usually end up losing sight of the goal, which should always be doing the most good for the most people. I know that this job is not an easy one, and I'm not about to point fingers at past board members or anyone else about how we got here. What I strive to do is move forward and listen carefully to the needs of our community to make sure that the decisions we make benefit all of us as much as humanly possible. I will also never claim to have all the answers, but if elected, I will fight for affordable housing, for better and safer sidewalks and roads, for environmental protection and clean water initiatives, and for a more transparent and compassionate government. These issues are so broad and contain so many components that there is no silver bullet for any of them. We need to chip away at them patiently and precisely and recognize that even small steps in the right direction can have a huge impact on a community our size. And we need to recognize that progress on these issues relies on having a truly collaborative and compassionate town board, one that is free of ego and communicates well not only between its members but with the community as a whole. I believe in Woodstock. I have seen how tough, resilient, smart, and compassionate Woodstockers are. I want this town to strive and grow responsibly, but most importantly, to retain its character and values. I think about the station and how we felt when we first walked through that building. It was old, it had been moved 3 times, there weren't any right angles in the whole building for the most part. That's it. Does she talk faster than can I keep? She hasn't been here, so let me give it to her, okay? The whole building for the most part, but it had charm and quirks, and the fear of seeing it drywalled over or modernized spurred us to protect it. We embraced the imperfections because they were part of its history. I believe we need to think this way about our town too. We will never be perfect. There will always be peculiarities and eccentricities here, but that's part of our story. We can't let our character get lost in the face of progress, and understanding our history and embracing it will determine how we shape our future. We can own our mistakes and learn from them and use them to make better choices. I'd like to close by thanking everyone who has supported me, the Woodstock Democratic Committee, and all of the other candidates who have all been wonderful to talk to and get to know. I find it very comforting to know that no matter what happens with me personally in this race, there are excellent people with big ideas and great intentions up here. And I believe that Woodstock is about to get a town board it truly deserves. Thank you. So that was Lily. On that note, I would like to just close here. First of all, I want to thank the audience of all of these forums. You've all been absolutely incredible, attentive, and even with my slip-ups, you've been patient and you've been really terrific, and I really appreciate that. I also want to thank the Woodstock Democratic Committee for putting this on. And last but not least, I want to say that it's really hard to be run for office. It's really hard to be an elected official. It's not easy. And the fact that these folks have stood up is really incredible. And I tip my hat to you, and I hope that we all can give them a round of applause and see them on the meet and greet. So thank you very much.